A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We have 9 minutes to go before it is afternoon. My name is Eleni Jakas. I'm an anchor and correspondent at CNN International. I'm delighted to welcome you today. Today we mark the 30th anniversary of the Arabian travel market. It is incredible to reflect on the last 3 decades. The tourism industry has evolved at rapid pace. We have seen incredible opportunities. We have seen incredible growth. We have seen evolution, particularly in this region. But one thing remains constant. People are yearning for enlightening and enriching experiences. And now the region is celebrating incredible growth. It's been propelled by consumer demand, and it's been matching the offerings that have evolved in the region over the past few years. Within the rising opportunities, a dynamic that is shaping not only the industry, but also mankind, is climate change. We are at a crossroads at the moment on so many fronts, and sectors that adapt, that prepare, and become part of the road to net zero will be the strongest, the most powerful drivers of economic growth. And the travel market is at the heart of this. I was just doing some research, and we always hear these data points. But if travel and tourism were a country, in terms of global emissions, it would come after the likes of the US and China. The industry accounts for 8% of carbon emissions at a global level. So the onus is on us to think differently and create a more sustainable environment. That is why during this 4-day conference, sustainability will be laying the foundation in the conversations. We'll be hearing from key leaders within various sectors, including from key destinations, from travel and tech, aviation, investment, recruitment, as well as hospitality. We'll also be looking at key source markets, which I think are adapting and changing rapidly. We'll be looking at China and India, and of course the GCC, that will be forming part of the coverage in our conversations. Some highlights on the agenda, and you're seeing incredible stalls from very different countries across the board. If you go to the global stage, the conversations that will be had will be talking about the cost of sustainable luxury with destinations of the world news. We'll look to the future, space tourism, something you don't want to miss. At the tech stage, we'll be talking about the role of the metaverse. At the sustainability hub, we'll be looking at green technology as well as a sustainability think tank, which definitely is something you want to try and mark on your calendar. And also something I'm very passionate about is the benefits of rural tourism, which I think is offering so much opportunity specifically for small to medium-sized enterprises. So on that note, we're going to start with our first panel discussion. We have incredible people that we'll be inviting on stage shortly, but we're going to be setting the scene and the tone and hopefully discussing some of the themes that are going to be discussed in depth over the next 4 days. How should travel tackle the climate crisis? It's a conundrum. There's so many facets to it, but hopefully we'll be able to get through some of these issues. It is top of mind for leaders, I think for companies, for the big companies, for the small players, and I think across the board for so many industries. So how should the travel and tourism industry adapt to tackle this and meet regulations? Who's going to enforce them? How are we going to measure them? What are the metrics? What are standardization processes? And so forth. I was lucky enough to go to COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt last year. It was incredible. I think it gave a very important voice to people in the region and specifically for the African continent. And this year, we bring the conversation here to the UAE during COP28. And it's an opportunity to show them what we're doing, what we're planning to do, how sustainability is forming part of our agenda. On that note, I'd like to welcome my incredible panelists. We'll be welcoming His Excellency Mr. Abdullah bin Tug Al Mari, the UAE Minister of Economy. He'll be joining us shortly. We have His Excellency Walid Nasser, the Minister of Tourism, Lebanon. So you can join us on stage. Thank you. Round of applause. You can take a seat there for me. Thank you so much. We have Abed Al-Razek Arabiyat, the Managing Director. Hello, sir. Please take a seat. Managing Director of Jordan Tourism Board. Great to have you with us, sir. We need a bit more energy this morning. Thank you. And Dr. Sujit Mohanty, Director, Arab Region, United Nations Officer, Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. Right, welcome everyone. I'm going to take my seat as we wait for the Minister of Economy to come and join us. Fantastic, great to have you with us. Yes. Dr. Sujit, I'm going to start with you. My first question is basically going to be, who's going to pay for sustainable tourism? But I'm going to ask that to His Excellency from the UAE, because he's the man with the money on this stage. But I'm going to start with you. Look, you're from the UNDRR. You work with various countries. You help create regulation, thinking about how to build resilient cities. How many countries are you working with at this juncture in the region? And what is the uptake right now?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Eleni, and thanks for this opportunity to speak here. I'm coming from United Nations Office of Disaster Risk Reduction. It's a UN department. We work in all the countries, but specifically in the Arab region. We work in all the 22 countries with governments, with stakeholders, civil society, private sector, to reduce disaster risk. So I think it's a very interesting question, Eleni, you start with, is who pays for it? This is definitely, we will go into the detail, but unless we all take a share, it doesn't work. So that's in very brief. I would say everybody has a responsibility when it comes to climate change and managing the impact of climate change. So we will go, I'm sure we'll go in deeper into this discussion. So over to you, Eleni.
Okay, you're saying everyone should have a stake in this and pay, right? So private sector and government. Okay, fantastic. That's a good starting point. Dr. Abed, I want to come to you. What we've been seeing has been truly fascinating in terms of what Jordan has been experiencing, right? And I was looking at the Euromonitor Sustainability Index. In fact, Jordan, if you didn't know this, is the best ranked country in the Middle East on this index. But you've actually gone down a few spots from the previous year. That being said, you're doing incredible work when it comes to sustainability. You've really hit the mark on so many fronts, but you have to keep up the momentum, because the European countries, by the way, are dominating that index up until where you are, which is, of course, sitting at 47th. Give me a sense of how important it is in your agenda to ensure that you have a sustainable industry, right? And sustainability is not only about climate change, but socio-economic. The tentacles are far-reaching.
Thank you. The mic, so it will be my voice will be, I think, more clear. Thank you for this question. Yani, as you said, sustainability now became the trend now for the destinations and the responsible tourism now. Responsible tourism, it means that how we will educate the businesses in Jordan, the travelers, how they contribute to their emissions and the carbon print or the pollution, which is reflecting on the climate change. So education is very important. We have a program now to educate all the businesses in Jordan how to calculate. So if they can, once you calculate, so you can know how you produce, so you can know how we can reduce.
Is that difficult, the calculation part, getting to data?
You know, one of the things, give you an example. You know, after Corona, with the pollution or the production because of the COVID-19, using the masks, the gloves, all these things, and the one single-use things that in the tourism through the supply chain, I think contributes a lot to the pollution and the emissions and worldwide. I'm talking about. So one of the things that, in parallel with the education, you give an incentive for the businesses, which is very important to give more preferential treatment for the supply chain. In Jordan, give you an example. If you stick or adhere to the regulations of the green tourism, responsible tourism, as Jordan Tourism Board, you will get discounts on participation in the exhibitions. This is one example. For the fam trips and press trips hosted by Jordan Tourism Board, we will not send our, let's say, fam trip to the hotels that they are not stick to the green tourism or responsible tourism or the sustainable tourism. So given incentives, and we are start talking to the government, give more tax incentive for those who are adhering.
But the point is you have to measure, you have to understand
actually,
what's going on, right?
It's a science where the once you are reducing your amenities or the things used in the food and beverage, in the tourism, or even transportation, depending on renewable energy. And hotels now, they are transferring from the regular, let's say, electricity production or supplies to renewable energy solar panels. They are now converting to that. Also, the rental car companies now, they are converting to the electric cars now. So they are reducing the, or they can reduce more emissions. Calculator now, maybe we need an investment.
Yes.
And we have this calculator, how they, and an application, how they do the calculator, where I hope that one of the recommendations of the COP28 will come up with this calculator, which is, I think it's a huge investment.
I hope that happens, right? The measurement part is very important. Minister Nasser, great to have you with us. I'm so glad that you were able to join. Full disclosure, I have not been to Lebanon or Jordan yet, and I've been in the region for 2 years. This is unacceptable. I need to come and visit you. Look, Lebanon has seen incredible numbers in terms of visitors. And it is encouraging. It's an important revenue earner for you. It is important for you to keep a very strong sector. But many people are wondering, how can you ensure that sustainability and climate change remain top of the agenda when you are in an economic crisis right now? You've got a political deadlock. So how do you ensure that sustainability metrics, sustainability targets don't fall off that list of priorities?
First of all, thank you for this great panel. I would like to thank the UAE government and the organizer at the ATM as well, and my colleague, Excellencies. I think His Excellency is not attending, as we're seeing on the screen. So as you have mentioned, Elena, Lebanon, it's a special case.
Yeah.
And not only in terms of numbers, or we'll talk about the sustainability, but I would like to point out on the very important fact that Lebanon, despite the political and economical crisis, has witnessed for the last 2 years, and specifically in 2022, a significant numbers of tourists and number of arrivals to Lebanon. Our target in the beginning of the summer 2022 was to around 1.7 million, and Lebanon, the number of arrivals exceed the 2 million passengers arrivals on Lebanon. Out of the 2 million, 25% foreigners and 75% from our diaspora. So, and out of the 25% of the foreigners, around 20% from the Arab world, and particularly Egypt, Iraq, and Jordan. So we hope that this year...
So that's room for growth. That's what I'm hearing, basically.
We are expecting this year, this summer, if we are... the stability, political stability will remain the same. We are expecting the number of tourists arriving to Lebanon till end of September around 2.2 million. And those numbers are coming from an analysis, not a benchmark.
Yeah.
So we can expect really a very, very hot summer in terms of tourists in Lebanon.
Okay, but I mean, and this is great, right? Because the numbers are fantastic. But to what extent is the political situation and the economic crisis impacting your ability, sir, to make sure that we're talking about sustainable tourism, right? That's the issue. Does that dilute your ability to be able to say, look, these are the regulations, this is how it needs to be enforced, and that the private sector that's dealing with the inflationary environment saying, yes, I have money to be able to spend on these metrics?
This is what we said. Lebanon, the last 10 years, I think, if we go back to the climate change, we are, our seasons, the 4 seasons in Lebanon,
Yeah.
we cannot say anymore that we are in the summer season or the winter season or the spring season, whatever. The climate change has really affected the characteristic of the 4 seasons. It means that we have a mix of seasons in Lebanon. We can notice that even the development of the tourism institutions all over Lebanon, and we'll talk about the guest house and the hotels, whatever, the mountain in Lebanon and the ski resorts that we have 4 or 3 or 4, it's not only for the winter season. So the mountain, it's also for the summer seasons and vice versa. Even the coast, it's not only for the summer season. So the mix of the climate change that affects the 4 seasons, this is one of the advantage that Lebanon in the region has. And the timing, it's not only the high season anymore. Over the 12th month of the year, we can say that it's between 7 and 9 months the tourism sector is really active and
So you say
prominent.
climate change has had a positive impact on your
Yes,
tourism industry
I think
because it's warmer, which means that it has extended your seasons.
I said Lebanon, it's a special case. Yani we all know.
But
this.
I'm sure Dr.
So
Sujit is saying
even-
this is what we have to
Yeah,
worry
even
about.
the COVID, the
Even
pandemic,
COVID.
has affected positively specifically the domestic
Markets, yeah.
tourism in Lebanon.
Okay, let me get Dr. Sujit. You're listening in, and I'm sure you're going, okay, this is great, right? This is fantastic. It's helping Lebanon increase tourism numbers. It's changing seasons. But you're thinking risk down the line, right? Am I
You know,
correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very interesting conversation, I must say, because I'm hearing different, opinions from different sides, from government, from Excellency, Minister, from the private sector. And Ellen, you raised actually a very good question, which is who pays for it? And you also said, will the private sector be willing to spend on climate crisis or the emissions and those? So let me, talk about what actually the industry is facing today. Globally, economic losses due to disasters have gone through the roofs.
Yeah.
In last 20 years, economies lost almost $2.97 trillion of economic losses happened in the last 20 years. And if you go back to another 20 years, there was almost like 1.68 trillion. And now there is also a trend that the climate, because of the climate change or increasing temperature, you have more severe and more frequent climate-related hazards happening. The floods, cyclones, hurricanes, heat waves, all of those are multiplying in its effect. You have more severity and more frequency.
Yeah.
What does that mean to the industry? That means industry, the tourism and travel industry is also losing an enormous amount of money because of these natural hazards. Then I would say, then comes the question, who pays for it? You will only pay for it when you can prove there is a return of investment, right? This is very much private sector wording that if I don't see a return of investment, I don't spend. So I'm here saying you are actually investing to protecting your own investment in your industry,
Yeah.
what you have. If you don't invest now, you risk your businesses, your investment that you may lose in upcoming disasters. Now, it's really now proven by scientists in the the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, which you call IPCC, is that the frequency and intensity of climate-related hazards is going to increase, is going to be doubled. And it's really scary to us because we work on risk reduction. We work with countries on reducing their risk, adapting to climate change, and that, I think, should be the top priority for everyone. And often I hear that, climate change is government's problem.
Yeah, but
It's not the private sector, it's not my problem. But let me remind you, it's your business which is getting affected by these natural
But Dr.
phenomena, the
Sujit,
natural
it is
hazards.
your business that's also contributing to carbon emissions, right? That's the other thing. Dr. Abid, I have to come to you on this. I mean, you're from the tourism board. So essentially, let's talk about the value chain of things happening. Government produces regulation. You're sort of the middleman between, what government is saying and what the hoteliers and people on the ground and companies are experiencing. And then the question is, who's going to pay for it, right? But you've got to measure, you've got to have these metrics, which we've ascertained. And I'm curious in terms of when you're giving licenses now, you're renewing licenses, how important is the sustainability aspect into what you're doing? Because I was thinking about, when you go into a hotel and you see a 5-star rating, right? You see a 5-star rating. Is sustainability part of that rating? It's not, correct? It's not. So how are you thinking about it in the Jordan
thank you for
context?
addressing that. It's before that, personally, I strongly believe that the tourism sector is resilient, adaptable, and flexible.
Okay.
And we proved that during the COVID-19. You can see that I think the most effective sector was the tourism sector, and they recovered quickly because of they have flexible and resilient plans where they moved to the domestic tourism to compensate the international tourism.
Yeah.
You can see worldwide people start traveling within the country. So they are adaptable and flexible. The other thing, which is very important, and you have to notice that, it's a joint venture. It's a cooperation between the private and the government. So the government will be the enabler for the private sector to adapt or to contribute and to support them within the cost of doing the calculator.
You're saying incentives, rebates.
Yes,
We're
and
talking about
to enable the private sector to adapt and to adhere to the regulations and the policies. The new one, indirect way, you give incentives, you give maybe preferential treatment, access to the funding where the supply chain or the services or the hotels or whatever, they are adhering or they are implementing the new regulations that contributes to the reducing the emissions. So these incentives will definitely encourage all the supply chain to.
Is that already happening in Jordan? You say, well, is it already
actually
assisting?
no? We
how
are
much
now
are you spending?
we just started, and we put this in the paper. But one of the things that we already started as Jordan Tourism Board, now we are sending all the influencers. Jordan Tourism Board, we are responsible for marketing.
Yeah.
Visit Jordan is the marketing arm for the country. So the one of the let's say hotels or one supply chain that they are adapting the responsible tourism, sustainable tourism, local community, contributing to the local community. They are adhering to these regulations, get more exposure within our platforms. We send the influencers to them because we want to show the case for let's give you an example, the agri-tourism.
Yes.
We have now one of the experiences in Jordan called agri-tourism, where we are encouraging and diverting the marketing there to show the sustainable tourism in Jordan. And we introduced a new meaningful map, which is one of the things that exactly representing the sustainable tourism. It's eco-friendly, and it's already managed by the local community and managed by women. 90% of these projects managed by women. And one of the eco-lodges in Jordan called Finan, one of the top 10 eco-lodges worldwide according to the Lonely Planet and National Geographic. So we have success stories in Jordan, and the others are following the steps. Because I'll give you something. By the way, one of the surveys that conducted in the Scandinavian markets, the travelers in the Scandinavian market, they don't look into the prices first or to the destination or the experience. They look into the destinations or the experiences that eco-friendly and green tourism. So this is the first thing that before they decide, especially in the Scandinavian market. So the world is moving toward the eco-friendly experiences, green tourism, responsible tourism, where now this is the trend will be for the upcoming 5 years.
Yeah, that's interesting. And there was another survey actually, I think done by Google, if I'm not mistaken, showing that people are a lot more aware. So they'll click, yes, I want a more eco-friendly experience that hits the marks on sustainability. But when it comes down to purchasing that, they're actually not, right? So consumers still have one more leap to do. So I think we have so much work to do. If you're offering it, then consumers only have that option.
If to add, one of the associations, the travel associations in the United States called Tourism Cares.
Yeah.
And it's now it's been the Jordanian lady, our office in the United States, became the chairwoman of this association, which is represent the USTOA, Virtuoso, AAA, all these big associations.
Yeah.
They have the CSR part of these associations, where they add extra nights for the travel agents, tour operators that selling Jordan for the projects or the local experiences that are adhering and are going eco-friendly or green tourism. So this is
nice.
Adaptable from these big names. That this is the trend. I think the tourism experiences or the supply chain that they are not within this environment, they will be out of the market.
Fascinating. So you're basically marrying, what you're offering with what is being in demand. So you're actually looking at what the product entails. Minister,
Yes.
look, I'm fascinated by rural tourism. I was mentioning this. You're expanding your seasons, which is encouraging and so forth. Very similar to what we see in Jordan. Very exciting religious experiences, right, that are offered in Lebanon. In the current climate that you're experiencing, what are the things that you're hearing from the smaller businesses, from the guest houses, from what they need and what their experiences are and what they're concerned about? And does sustainability and climate change form part of that conversation?
Excuse me, can I add some points
Please,
on what
absolutely.
Dr. Arabiyat mentioned for the sustainability to achieve? Because I think it's a complex challenge at the sustainability, and this industry must consider the many factors, particularly the education, the training, innovation, finance, technology, and collaboration.
Yeah.
And we can go through this in details. To go back to the guest house, this sector or this niche of business, during the last 2 or 3 years in Lebanon, we noticed that this field, the guest house, is we noticed that this business is really an improvement and developing.
Yeah.
That's why we established a syndicate. And now, today in Lebanon, we have a syndicate for the guest house. The number of members so far is almost 156 guest house. And this is all over Lebanon. And we're really satisfied because most of those guest house are not in the cities. It's in the remote area.
Yeah.
And this has to support the citizen in each area and to get more investment, and we'll have opportunity and vacancies in those areas. And very soon, in 1 month, I think, end of June, the syndicate will be established with not only, it's definitely, it's as you said, Doctor, it's from the private sector, all the guest houses. So the government and the Ministry of Tourism have nothing to do. We're only managing and the process of the syndicate, but we're relying on the private sector, and this the success of this sector is due to, first of all, the expansion of the foreigner tourism to discover Lebanon and to participate and to develop more the activities that can be run in the remote area within the.
But does sustainability fall into that?
Yes,
into that offering?
Within the religious tourism, rural tourism, ecotourism. So yes, we are there, and soon we'll have everything on a digital platform.
So Minister, while you're seeing this incredible growth in guest houses, right, which is incredible because it means the small to medium-sized enterprises are now entering the market, new offering, you've got more options for your tourists. How is the funding situation in terms of what government is able to do to assist these new players in able to hit the metrics you need them to hit on sustainability? So the question is about who's going to pay for it, right? Which we've kind of discussed with the other guests.
Now we mentioned that unfortunately the government and the MOT, Minister of Tourism, our liability, our intervention, it's really limited because of the economic situation. We are really relying on the private sector. And in order to push or to give incentive to the public sector, we have to create some kind of trust and stability. And I think the most important thing is the media. So today we have one of the pioneer media, the chairman of LBCI with us, Sheikh Pierre Daher. So the media is playing really a very important role to promote and to show the real image and the positive image of not only of the Lebanese but for the spirit after this pandemic, the explosion of Beirut port and the economic crisis. It's a question of promotion and to show the real image of Lebanon and the activities that, and that's why, Elena, the numbers say all.
Of course.
So if we have, if we're not expecting, if we got already 2 million visitors to Lebanon, this says all.
Dr. Abid, how many millions do you, I think it's 1.5, 2?
No. Last year?
Yes, last year?
Last year we have
1.4.
Last year, visitor, we have 4.2.
4.2. Okay, are
And
you
this is-
competing with each
No,
other?
actually, no, we are complementing, by the way. but
Complementing.
sorry
That's the
to-
word, ladies and
No, no,
gentlemen.
I'm talking 2 million summer season.
Only summer season, okay.
For the first 3 months, you have 1.2.
And-
But yeah, but I meant to add.
Okay.
Over tourism is very dangerous. By
Yes,
the way.
and
At the
we're gonna
same
get to
time,
that. That's something
this
I
is
have my
over
agenda.
tourism, and now we are. I think Lebanon also. They are
Yeah.
putting some regulations in terms of the number of visitors that allowed to enter the site. So over tourism very dangerous and to have a negative impact.
We're going to get into that. I do want to bring in Dr. Sujit. I'm just asking because I was curious if you're competing with each other, but I'm glad the word is complementing. That is very diplomatic, I have to say. Okay, Dr. Sujit, there were so many interesting strands here that are coming through. Here's my question to you, because you look at it from a macro perspective. When a country is dealing with an economic crisis, right, hyperinflation, and concerns like we're seeing coming through in Lebanon, what is the ability of countries to be able to make sure that sustainability remain part of the priority list? And does that worry you in terms of potential issues?
To be honest, it does worry us a lot.
Okay.
The reason being, today in the world, I think majority of countries are facing multiple risks.
Yeah.
Financial risk, you had the pandemic risk, you had multiple disasters happening together, where we had cases where you have an earthquake, a tsunami hitting the same place at the same time, or a cyclone and flooding happening at the same time, and an epidemic at the same time. We saw even in Lebanon, there were cases of flooding, wildfire during the pandemic. So when everybody is really stretched to their maximum, you have conflicts, you have issues of civil war, you have issues of natural hazards. Everything comes together, and we call it, in our words, it's called the cascading risk or systemic risk.
Yeah.
Risk is no more constrained with that you have a flood, you're dealing with only with flood. No, it can be multiple aspects of risk, such as during epidemic or a pandemic, you have a flood, which means you deal it with completely differently. You have a social distancing, and you cannot evacuate your people to one safe shelter, right? So it creates a multiple layers of challenge, which is also new for many countries to deal with. And we have cases from many countries that how do you actually deal while there are climate risk is increasing or climate impact is increasing. At the same time, countries are actually suffering with conflict, with epidemics, pandemic, and multitude of other risks. So I think it worries us because the sustainable development cannot be achieved if we do not deal with the risk on its face. And that the whole global community is very clear that we cannot achieve sustainable development if we do not minimize our risks, if we do not reduce losses.
Because I think, initially when we were talking about sustainable tourism, we're getting rid of single plastic use, we're not washing our towels as much and so forth. Now, but you're saying you've also got to think about the risks, because it's so much more than just what we see as an experience.
Yes, I mean, there are so much more, I would say, but it's not that we are completely helpless. Now, in our work, there is always a distinction we make between hazards and disasters. We are saying that there is nothing called a natural disaster. And some people say, what are you saying? I mean, a flood is a natural disaster. And some people even say, oh, these things, flood, cyclone, these are acts of God. You cannot do anything about it. And this is so wrong in terms of our understanding, is that no disaster is natural. If human beings do not build in a wrong place and a weak house. Let me give you an example. If you build a house which is weak and it's in the floodplain, it's bound to be destroyed.
So let me ask you this, the UNDRR, right? Do you have synergies and overlap with the UNWTO, where you're working directly with the travel and tourism arm of the UN?
We do. I would say there is synergy. But as you know, UN is such a huge machinery. You
Yeah.
have multitude of organizations, but we try to work with as many partners as possible within the UN because the issue of disaster risk reduction touches on all aspects of development, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's
Yeah.
core development, governance, or even like children and women issues of UNICEF. They're all interconnected.
Okay, perfect. Let's talk about over-tourism, because that was on my list of priorities for today. You've got incredible offerings. I mean, the Golden Triangle. So we're talking about multi-religious experiences, and the numbers are looking so positive. How do you protect your scarce resources from over-tourism? We've seen examples like that playing out, by the way, in Asia, right? Where too many people go to beaches and certain islands, and then you have to shut it down so that the regions can recover. Are you worried? Let me ask you this. Are you worried? Are you worried?
Yeah, I'm worried actually, but we sat with the government there. We have independent bodies there, which is the Aqaba Special Economic Zone, which is responsible of Aqaba and Wadi Rum.
Yeah.
And we have an independent authority in Petra, where we sat with them because the feedback that we are getting, that was before COVID-19, once they allowed one of the cruise ships to enter the site in Petra, so we have 4,000 at the same time.
Wow.
And you can't imagine the negative impact and the social media back then about over-tourism. So it was an alert, and we raised the flag at that time that we need to put or set a site management plan where you regulate the timing. So it's not allowed, by the way, and by the way, Petra one, it's a World Heritage Site, it's UNESCO.
Yeah.
So it's not allowed. You have these regulations, you have to stick and adhere to the regulations of UNESCO, where it's not allowed. The capacity of the site, 3,500 per day. If you need more, at the same time, you need just to do the timing, and we suggest now in the process to add more fees for the entrance fees for the people who want to enter during the day, and maybe do some discounts maybe after afternoon. So this will manage the flow to the site. Wadi Rum, frankly speaking, because we have 250 camps there, where we are facing some problems with the littering there and the trash in the Wadi Rum.
Yeah.
So we have a unit called part of the police in Jordan, responsible for the environment. They start to go there and to do some of inspections, where to make sure that all the camps they are stick to the regulations. But at the end of the day, I believe that the tourism sector, if you look into the tourism in general, we need to look into four pillars, which is awareness, as I said, education for both for the travelers and the businesses, how they contribute, or the activities that contributes to their emissions or the carbon prints. The other thing which is the adaptation, we need to adapt certain activities that reduce our emissions. The third thing, which is very important, the carbon offsets. We need to look into the activities or as a supply chain, how we can contribute to the carbon offset by converting to the clean energy, green energy, responsible tourism. These three pillars very important for any destination to be part of the new trend of the green tourism.
Minister Nasser, as you're saying, you've got incredible growth of the guest house space. In fact, there's restaurants being built. There's actually big investment coming through in Lebanon because of this incredible tourism spike that you're seeing. You're actually one of the most competitive regions in terms of, offerings for visitors. A lot of your companies are now pricing everything in dollars, right, to mitigate what you're seeing in the inflationary environment. And speaking about over-tourism, is that something you're worried about right now? Or are you just focusing, let's get the numbers where we need them, grow the sector, and then we'll worry about over-tourism when we start to see worrying signs? Or is that already on your radar?
The question, please? I'm not
Are you
hearing.
already worried about over-tourism? Sorry, it's amazing music playing in the background. Are you already worried about over-tourism as you're seeing a growth in your numbers?
As a responsible, yes, I can say all the time that I'm worried. But in fact, you know, the Lebanese, we are a challenger all the time, and we have the hope all the time, and we rely on our diaspora, and you know, the diaspora in terms of number, it's 5 times the citizen, Lebanese citizen. So no, I'm not. All what we should remain pushing and working on, it's the awareness, the promotion, the innovation, and everything related. Because you know, in Lebanon, the doctor, he's saying we're not competing, but he's saying in Jordan we have Petra, and he's mentioning the number. So in Lebanon we have Baalbek, we have Tir, Sidon, Byblos. So it's a positive competition. It's not, we complete each other. So
I sense a little bit of competition,
no,
just a
but,
little bit.
But I can interfere. Sorry to interrupt you. By the way, just a fact from my perspective as a tourism board, the long-haul destinations, let's say 7+ travelers, let's say from United States, from Latin America, from China and Japan, they will not coming to the Middle East to visit one country. So we used, by the way, we used 40% of our tourism in 2011 and before. It was 40%, it was combined with Lebanon and Syria. So yes, we are complementing it when it comes to the long-haul destinations.
Yeah, of course.
And we are promoting Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria as a combined packages. This is the thing I'm talking about.
Okay, fantastic.
And excuse me, since we're talking, we're in UAE, and we are part of the Arab League. We're as Lebanon. Within the sustainability, I think that Lebanon, we won this year as the Minister of Tourism, Ministry of Tourism, the campaign in Berlin, in the show of Berlin, and this came from the Arab League and the Arab Tourism Organization. So Lebanon won the beautiful campaign for the summer season in the Arab world. أهلا بهالطلة. So this kind of award, it's within the sustainability because it will
a metric,
be
right?
listed and posted forever.
Very quickly, because we're running out of time, and I want to get to Dr. Sujit as well, but I've got one last question for you, Minister, and in fact for you, Dr. Abed, as well. Saudi-Iranian friendship now emerging, right? The region actually has mended many of the worries and the tension that we've had before. Does that impact your numbers? Are you excited what that's going to do?
Definitely. Any approach or rapprochement between any two Arab countries, it will affect positively Lebanon, because first of all, we are part of this area, and second, because you know, from day zero, when I've been assigned the minister, we were all the time talking, and not only talking, we were acting to this relationship between Lebanon, GCC, Saudi Arabia, to improve this relationship, because it should be normal between neighbors and
fantastic.
You know. And I think this, what's happening now in the region, it will affect definitely positively not only the tourism sector, but in general.
As a whole. So Dr. Sujit, we've got growth coming here. We've got incredible offerings. We heard Dr. Abed also talking about concerns of over tourism. where to from here? Because I'm thinking you need clean data, you need to be able to calculate, you need
Yes.
standardization of regulation, and you need money to be able to do it,
Yes.
right?
Very-
So where to from here?
Very, very true. And you know, the way from here is very this very conversation, which is already a kind of, you know, cooperation between two countries. And I see, you know, some level of positive competition is always good. And we call it regional cooperation or cooperation between countries, learning from each other, the good practices happening in different places. So this is one of the essential, you know, item, I would say, along with all other things you mentioned, about financing, who pays for it, having good regulatory environment, having good preparedness, having good risk, you know, management. All of those combined together, I think, can really prepare us to to tackle the climate risk. And it is, as you mentioned, I think in the beginning, that 8% of emission is contributed from the travel and tourism
Yeah.
industry. So there is certainly an onus on the travel and tourism industry to think about it, but not from a spending perspective, from an investment perspective, that you are investing to make your business safer for tomorrow. I will end that with
And you're working both with Jordan and Lebanon, right?
yes,
So they're in safe hands.
they are in safe hands as long as they want to be in safe hands.
We won't, definitely.
All right, Dr. Abed, Minister Nasser, Dr.
Thank
Sajid,
you.
thank you very much. Round of
Thank
applause
you.
for my incredible guests, for their honesty. I wish you a successful ATM. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.